All right, so you're here because you're like us, right? Always looking for the most effective ways to train, especially when it comes to building strength and muscle. You want to cut through the noise, get straight to the good stuff, the key takeaways, without wading through endless research papers, am I right?
Yeah, exactly. You don't have time to read every study that comes out.
That's what we're here for with the deep dive. We do the digging for you, we pull out the most important nuggets, and then we break it all down for you so you can actually use this information in your own training.
Think of it as your shortcut to understanding the science behind building muscle and strength.
And today, we're tackling a question that I know a lot of you have probably wondered about, especially if you're serious about lifting. Are there smarter ways to lift than just your basic sets and reps? Could we be doing something more effective, maybe even save some time in the gym while we're at it? We're diving deep into a study that compared three popular methods: good old-fashioned traditional resistance training, which they called TRT in the study, drop sets, and rest pause training.
Yeah, these are all methods you see people using in the gym all the time.
Yeah.
But how do they actually stack up against each other when it comes to results?
Exactly. So, to be super clear, traditional resistance training in this study, the TRT, meant doing multiple sets with the same weight and taking your regular rest periods between those sets. Nothing fancy.
Right. Then you've got drop sets where you push to failure with a weight, you can't do another rep, and then you immediately drop the weight, usually by like 10-25%, and you crank out more reps until you hit failure again. Keep pushing those limits.
And then rest pause. This one's interesting. You use a consistent weight, lift until you hit that wall, you can't do another rep, then you take a very short break, like 10-15 seconds, catch your breath, and then you try to squeeze out a few more reps with that same weight. So the question is, which of these approaches leads to the best results?
That's what this study set out to determine.
And the source for today's deep dive is a really cool article from the Applied Physiology, Nutrition, and Metabolism Journal. It came out in July 2021, and the title is a bit of a mouthful, but it lays it all out. Rest pause and drop set training elicit similar strength and hypertrophy adaptations compared with traditional sets in resistance-trained males.
A lot to unpack there for sure.
It is. And the research team behind this, Allison Eanes, Ragami C. Alves, Brad J. Schoenfeld, you know Brad Schoenfeld, he's a big name in hypertrophy research.
Yeah, he's done a ton of work in this area.
Gustavo Aneda, Samuel C. Perrin, Tiago B. Trindade, Donato Prestes, and Tacido P. Souza Jr. So they really wanted to see how these different training styles compare when it comes to building strength and muscle, especially in guys who are already lifting regularly and have a decent base of training experience.
Because let's face it, most of the people listening are not beginners.
Yeah.
You're probably already hitting the gym consistently. You've got some experience under your belt.
Exactly. So what can you take away from this research, and how can you apply it to your own workouts to get the best possible results? That's what we're here to figure out.
So let's jump right in. How did they actually set up this study?
Yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Tell us about the participants.
They had 28 guys, all between 18 and 30 years old, and all of them were experienced lifters. They had to have been lifting consistently for at least 2 years, and they had to be able to squat a certain amount of weight relative to their body weight. So we're talking about guys who are already pretty strong and know their way around the gym.
Okay, so no newbies in this study.
No, these are experienced lifters. And they randomly divided these guys into 3 groups, one for each training method: rest pause, drop sets, and traditional resistance training. And they had them follow their assigned training program for a full 8 weeks, training twice a week.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty solid commitment.
So not just a quick little study.
No, this was a pretty serious training intervention. And here's something really important they did. They made sure that all 3 groups did the same total amount of training volume.
Okay, break that down for us. What do you mean by training volume?
So training volume is basically the total amount of work you do in a workout. It's calculated by multiplying the number of sets you do by the number of reps you do in each set, and then multiplying that by the weight you're lifting.
So it's like a measure of how much total weight you lift in a workout.
Exactly. And the researchers wanted to make sure that any differences they saw in results were due to the specific training method being used, not just because one group did more overall work than the others.
So it was a fair comparison.
Exactly. And they were really meticulous about this. For the drop set and rest pause groups, they counted a total of 16 reps as one effective set, because those methods involve doing multiple mini sets within a set. So for example, you might do 10 reps, then drop the weight and do 6 more reps for a total of 16. The traditional group just did straight sets of 12 reps.
Got it. So same total workload for everyone. Now, what were they actually measuring in these guys to see if the training methods made a difference?
They focused on 2 main outcomes: strength, and muscle growth. For strength, they measured each guy's 1 rep max, or 1 RM, on the barbell back squat. That's basically the heaviest weight you can lift for a single rep.
The ultimate test of strength.
Exactly. And for muscle growth, they measured muscle thickness in the thigh using ultrasound. They took measurements at 3 different points along the thigh, the top, middle, and bottom, to see if there were differences in growth along the length of the muscle.
So they really wanted to see how these methods affected different parts of the muscle.
Exactly. And they also wanted to make sure that any differences in results weren't due to other factors like diet.
Right, because if one group suddenly started eating a ton more or changed their diet drastically, that could skew the results.
For sure. So they had all the participants track their food intake for 3 days at the beginning, middle, and end of the study. And they had a nutritionist analyze all that data to make sure there were no big differences in calorie intake or the types of foods they were eating between the groups.
So they controlled for all those potential confounding factors.
Exactly. And when they analyzed the data, they found that there were no significant differences in diet between the groups throughout the study.
So we can be pretty confident that any differences in strength or muscle growth were due to the training methods themselves, not because one group was eating way more than the others.
Exactly.
Okay, now for the million-dollar question.
Mhm.
What did they find?
Okay, first, the good news. After 8 weeks, all 3 groups got significantly stronger. They all increased their 1 RM on the back squat. So no matter which method you use, as long as you're training consistently and pushing yourself, you're going to get stronger.
That's reassuring to know, but I'm guessing there were some differences between the groups.
Yeah, there were some interesting findings. The rest pause group actually saw significantly greater increases in their 1 RM squat compared to the traditional resistance training group.
Really?
Yeah.
Rest, pause, beat out traditional training for strength.
Yeah, in this study, it did. So if you're really focused on getting as strong as possible, it seems like incorporating some rest pause training into your routine could give you an edge.
That's a great takeaway, but what about the drop set group? Where did they fall?
That's where things get a little less clear-cut. There was no statistically significant difference in strength gains between the rest pause group and the drop set group, or between the drop set group and the traditional group.
So drop sets were kind of in the middle.
Yeah, they were comparable to both rest pause and traditional training for strength gains.
Interesting. Now, when researchers talk about statistical significance, sometimes that doesn't always translate to real-world differences, right? Like a difference could be statistically significant, but so small that it doesn't really matter practically.
Right, exactly. So the researchers also calculated what are called effect sizes. Basically, this helps us understand the magnitude of the difference between the groups. And the rest pause group had a large effect size. It was 1.18. The drop set group and the traditional training group also had large effect sizes, but they were a bit smaller, 0.93 and 0.81 respectively.
So even though all 3 methods led to big strength gains, the rest pause group saw the biggest improvements.
Yeah, numerically speaking, that's right.
Now, this is fascinating because I've seen